It's in one direction. Yeah.
Hi guys, is my mic on?
No.
Can everyone hear me?
Yep.
Okay guys, welcome. Has everyone enjoyed their weekend so far? I'm so glad we have a turnout today. I didn't know everyone was going to turn up because we are the last panel for the weekend, but I'm so happy you guys are here. So welcome. This is the past, present and future of live action escape games. Who here has done an escape room? Show of hands. Yes! Last year when we ran this panel, there was like 1 or 2 hands in the audience, so I'm glad that everyone here knows what an escape room is. Okay, so I am going to introduce, or they're going to introduce themselves. Today we have, well, I should introduce myself actually. I am Joan. I am the owner of Labyrinth Escape Rooms in Parramatta, Sydney. Oh, yay! Has anyone ever come up to our escape room before? Yes? Yes! Hi! Perfect! Alright, I'm going to get everyone to introduce themselves, tell them, they're going to tell you a little about themselves and their story and how they got into the industry, and then we'll start with the questions. I will also ask that if you have questions, there will be moments where I will, ask you guys if you have any questions about that, and the guys at the back will just choose randomly.
And if you're coming in a bit late, there's just a special incentive to come and sit in the first 2 rows. There are some special prizes underneath some chairs, so you're going to look at the second 2 first 2 rows. And hopefully you'll get lucky.
Are they going to lock the doors and we have 1 hour to get out?
Yes, you cannot leave until the panel is over. Alright guys, is everyone
They would just run out the front.
Alright, so we're going to start over at the other end here today, and off you go.
Okay, so hi, I'm Reid. I'm the Artistic Director of Pop-Up Playground. We're a live games company in Melbourne that's been operating for about 5 years, and we're here because we run a game called Small Time Criminals. Small Time Criminals is a live bank heist game, which uses the escape room form, but casts it as an open world, so there are tasks you can do throughout it. There are lots of mini missions throughout it as well, so it's more of a live immersive experience that uses problems rather than puzzles to create a narrative.
Hi, I'm Tom Allen. I'm a co-founder of Cubescape, which is based in Melbourne. We're more of a technology company. We build escape room technologies and then sell them to other people as games that they can operate. We've recently partnered with Strike Bowling, and we're operating 1 room in Melbourne Central right now, which is going very well. I got into escape rooms because I went with a bunch of friends to a really bad one. We thought we could do better than that. And then we lost 2 years of our lives, and here I am.
I'm Matt. I'm from the Enigma room up in Sydney. We're one of the older escape rooms now, I guess. So I've been operating for just shy of 2 years in Sydney. So I got into escape rooms back a few years ago when I went overseas. I was looking for something to do in London. And the best thing to do in London, according to TripAdvisor at the time, wasn't going to the Big Ben or going to see the Londden Eye. It was actually going to an escape room. So I thought that's a bit strange. Played it, really enjoyed it. Came back to Australia and said, "Oh, these are going to be great here in Australia." And was waiting for other people to open them up. Nobody did at the time, so I opened my own. And of course, by the time I started, then everybody opened one up as well.
My name is Jesse. I'm from Riddle Room, as you can see on the sign. I started, me and Chris here with the camera. We started, Canberra. Yes. So yeah, we opened the very first escape room in Canberra. Before we started working on ours, I had never personally done one, which is dangerous, I guess. But Chris, his partner, had done one, took him to do one, and then on the way back from Sydney, where he did it, he thought that would be really easy to open one up. How naive we were. So yeah, then I was on board straight away, and then we basically worked for several months, and eventually opened one up in our garage, where we operated for 10 months, and started. Actually, well, how many weeks? I think it's been like 2 weeks now. We've only got a commercial space and good at the garage.
Congrats. Awesome. And just quickly about Labyrinth Escape Rooms, our background. So I was a stay-at-home mum for many, many years. 12 years actually. That's how old my oldest is. And my husband was a truck driver, so very, very different feel to escape rooms. We went and did one in Sydney, a great one that was kept popping up on my Facebook for some reason. I don't know why. There's just, there's sponsored ads. I'm like, what is this escape room? We have to go do it. And went to that and absolutely loved it. I couldn't sleep that night, and that was a Saturday night. And by Monday morning, we started looking for places to lease because we thought it was going to be so easy to open our own rooms. Like, this is going to be done in a week. We're going to be making money. People are going to come. We opened up with a $20 per person special and had no customers. No one came in that first month. So that was really disheartening, but I'm so glad that we are pretty popular now in Parramatta. Not to toot my own horn, but anyways, a lot of the times at the very beginning, people were saying, what is it that you do now, and why did you sell your business? And it was always waffling on about, oh, you're locked in a room and it's so much fun and you find codes and puzzles and clues. And now it's like the movie Saw, but you don't die. So
Picked up Joan's cosplay, by the way.
I hope it's obvious.
Probably a little.
I forgot my tricycle. All right, let me start with the first couple of questions. All right, the first one. I think as players and even as owners, we're hearing this term Gen 1, Gen 2, Gen 3, Gen 4 rooms. I would like to clarify what that is, and I'm going to throw it over to Matt, actually. What do you think about these terms, Matt?
Are there any kids in the audience? No, I don't think there are, because there's not. Okay, it's shit. So to give a bit of background, so there's been some terminology which is mainly bandied around by escape room owners, but also comes to some players as well, about Generation 1 rooms being kind of the first original ones, and then as they've been getting progressively more advanced, going to Gen 2, Gen 3. But it's actually referring mainly to the technology levels of rooms. So Gen 1 rooms will have no tech, some wooden blocks and puzzles like that as well. Then Gen 2, where you may have other types of automated systems and so on and so forth as well. I think it's crap to classify rooms like that, because rooms are much more than their technology level. There's much more going on. I'm sure Robert will have an opinion with your rooms where there's narrative and player agency involved and things like that too. And to hamstring rooms purely by their classification on technology levels is just ludicrous.
Yeah, I think there's this idea that a Gen 4 room is better than a Gen 1 room. And I mean, you can't really, I think we're so young, the industry is so young that we can't really be classifying the rooms yet. Anyway, we're going to get to the stage where it's 2025 and it's like, I don't want to do a room less than Gen 15, sorry. So, does anyone have questions about that? No? Good?
I think it's as well as that, and I'm not also anti-technology, by the way, because we do employ some technology in our rooms too, and there are some really fantastic things happening overseas where people are pushing the technology limits as far as possible. I saw a great video last week of one which is being built, I think in Russia, because they can do much more than we can here in Australia because of their laws, or lack of laws, which is a rotating room. I think it's like a space capsule or something like that, which is kind of like Inception, where you stand inside it and it rotates like actually around, so you will be standing on what's the roof or whatever is of this rotating capsule going around too. And the technology involved in that, the engineering, is phenomenal, and that's great, but it's at the same time you can't rely purely on technology, I think.
Yeah, no, I think I agree with this. I really just take umbrage at the term generation. It seems ridiculous that in 2 years we've had 4 generations and they're all running simultaneously. That's not a generation. So I have no problem with describing rooms by their technology level, but I agree with everybody else. Technology is not the only part of a room.
It points to a kind of issue around the newness of the form, though, in that what we're trying to do is find ways of being able to categorize this is a good experience and that's a bad experience. And I think because it's such a new kind of experience, there's not a great culture of review or criticism around it, and there aren't a great deal of distinctions between the really varied kinds of rooms that can be offered. And the more traditional escape room experience that I suppose would be thought of as Gen 1 or Gen 2 or whatever, that's a fairly new term on me, I have to say, that I feel like the quality of the experience is the thing that needs to judge whether a thing is worth doing. a really simple experience that relies on simple props and simple kind of physical props and has no technology at all, can be just as engaging, if not more engaging, if the puzzles are good, if the story is good, and if the atmosphere is good. And I feel like the more, I mean, again, I echo the comments that that technology, there's nothing wrong with technology, but if it becomes purely driven by technology, the rooms and the experiences start to be less about the human experience of playing and start to become more like rides at the show.
Yeah. Okay. Yes.
I was just going to ask, are you going to have anything like a uniform categorization? You know, like if you're on the back of a video game, it says if it's a first-person shooter or you know, the level of person that should be playing, like MA or G-rated or stuff like that. Is there any sort of categorization that could be standardized across the escape rooms? So at least if you look at them, you can go, oh, well, this will be fine for my kids, but this won't be fine for, this won't be fine, this one won't. Or this one has, you know, scare elements, whereas this one is all about working stuff out. Is it, I mean, I know you're
so just
so
to reiterate the question, it's basically asking whether there is an industry standard for categorization of, say, genres of room, what kind of experience it's going to be, whether it's mostly about puzzles or mostly about object finding. And I'd say right now, no, there isn't one. I don't think there is an industry body that runs for escape rooms. We've been talking potentially about setting one up for Australia, and I think that's probably a great idea. And possibly there'll be ones internationally in the future. I think at the moment, the closest you've got is looking at some of the review sites that aggregate reviews from other sites, because those are starting to appear now. And some of those have tried to structure their reviews so that they give scores in different categories, like technology and genre and story. But at the moment, I think it's good.
There are two things in that question though. One is what kind of game is it, and the other is it suitable for a particular age group? I can't speak for the others, but both of our rooms, largely because they're filled with adult content, when we have it on our website, and when people ask as well, can our kids play, we give it a standard sort of game or movie rating of, we suggest M15+. So we use that as a kind of base rating for whether it's family friendly or not.
You don't want to have kids like learn how to rob banks. I think it's a very valuable life skill.
That's okay. It's all the drugs and all the safeties and all of that stuff that you find in the bank. Yeah.
So just going back to, you know, what a Gen 1 room is, and I know we moved on to that, but about safety in the rooms. Jessie, what do you think about the situation where you're physically trapped in a room and some rooms don't have a way out, they don't have those, you know, emergency exit buttons, and I know you have a story where you were physically trapped and you couldn't get out.
Well, to be fair, it was during testing. Well, actually, I think they were opening later that day or the next day, so not exactly. So yeah, we went and did their room. We got into the last room. It's not really spoiled if you don't know where it was, but the door in the last room like closes behind you when you walk in there, and then afterwards they were taking us through, and so we taken the key, got out of the room, put the key on the front desk, walked back into the room. They were showing us around, and then the door closed behind us again, and everyone that was at the shop and all the players were inside that room. No way out. And he's like, has anyone got a key? And I was like, no, I put it on the front desk. And he's like, we're actually stuck inside this room. So he had to crawl through the roof, over the wall, and then, get us out again.
It's just another way to escape, right?
So I should point out to anyone who's thinking of setting up an escape room, there are things in Australia called operational health and safety laws. What's just being described is illegal.
No, yeah, it is definitely one of the things as owners we definitely try and implement. We want to make sure that yes, you are trapped in a room, but if in case of any emergency or whatever you need, if you are, you know, a doctor on call or need to get out of that room, you need to be able to get out. So I think it is important for any owners and even as players. I'm not sure if you notice these things, but it is super important that there is a way out in case, you know, God forbid anything else. Yes, fine. All right, next question. Design. So let's talk about design. A lot of the rooms in Australia are designed with an emotional focus in mind. So you could be feeling stressed, you could be feeling disgusted at something. These rooms generally I feel are more exciting. Matt, what do you think about design and how they play an important part in our industry?
It's vital. I mean, it's kind of exactly the difference between what players would regard as a good room or a bad room as well. I went to a really interesting session a few weeks ago with a lady here in Melbourne. I think her first name is Lena, and she works in the academic side of gaming. I don't know if she's a colleague of yours, Rob. Yeah, there you go. But she gave a really interesting talk about live action gaming, saying that the one thing that really makes a really good game, it doesn't have to necessarily be an escape game, is player agency. So a lot of people have this concept of freedom of choice in open world games and video games and stuff like that, where you can choose to elect to do things. And obviously in escape games we restrict the level of choice because we put you in a very restrictive environment. But it's still up to you in terms of what you want to do, how you want to approach the puzzles, how you interact with your team and everything like that too. But yes, sure, you can do a puzzle and then move on to the next one and then move on to the next one. But to actually elevate that into something better would be to provide meaning to the players. Why are you opening this lock? Why is this lock even there? Is it going to have an effect? How do you feel about it? And if you can affect some kind of emotional response from players as they're doing things, whether even it's at that kind of level of exploring your space and then making decisions and how you react to certain things, I think that's definitely the best way to go about it. It's not easy though, because that's always going to be a difficult challenge, especially when we're putting people in a situation where it's a small amount of time and there's other pressures as well. But that's I think the way that we should, one thing that we should be thinking about.
I might jump in there for a second as well.
Yes.
I was going to add to that design is not only important for generating a space for player agency, but it can also shape the player experience. Most of the escape rooms that are out there are a kind of linear puzzle solving experience, not all by any stretch of the imagination. And to talk about Small Time Criminals, this is the one that I know, we don't ask you to do a series of singular puzzles. There are hundreds of kinds of puzzles in the bank. We have a 2-story bank, and we ask you to be bank robbers, basically. We ask you to play as if you're pulling a bank heist. So you dodge the security guard, you rifle through files, you hack into computers, you crack into the vault, all of those kind of things. But it's up to you and your team how you approach these things that are fundamentally human problems and solutions that can be made the way you would solve the problem if you were actually doing it. And so in that way, we use design to allow for players to be able to do the impossible and become things they're not. And it doesn't ask you to role play it, it doesn't ask you to act it, it just gives you tasks to do, and as you find yourself doing those tasks, you fall into the role and you can perform it without really even knowing it, and you come out feeling like you robbed a bank. And that's all about design, that's all about creating the space for the player to do all the work.
We recently did, I'll get to that in a second, we recently did Rob's room as a group, and there was a security guard in there and no one told us, you have to dodge the security guard, but we hear the steps coming up the stairs, I'm like, oh my god, I have to hide, and I know the security guard probably did see me, I wasn't hiding very well, and he turned around and he was using his torch, and he's like, oh, and then looked around the other way, but yeah, it's that whole element of, Rob designed this space where there's going to be a security guard, and as players, you just get into the, what's the word I'm looking for? The zone. Anna, yes.
Just a question, if this engagement with the character you're playing or with the story that you're playing, is it a local thing, it's an Australian thing, a cultural thing? I ask that because playing overseas, and we've played a fair few, when we play in Brazil, for example, scenography is the thing. If you enter a room and it's ugly, it's a bad room, that's what people think. Even if the puzzles are not that engaging, but it has to be beautiful.
What do you mean by ugly rooms? Is it like the decor is ugly, or the game masters?
The decor of the room itself. And while you're playing in Singapore, it's difficulty. If the room is easy, it's not that fun. They want the difficulty. It's the narrative, sometimes it's even, we had problems in understanding the story sometimes. But, oh, it was so hard, and people are loving it, and we were like, what? And so, is it a cultural thing?
definitely there are cultural influences on escape rooms. We do see the same sort of things that you've seen. A lot of us are members of an international Facebook group about escape rooms, and we definitely see the same kind of things coming through. For a very obvious example is in America, for example, the default way to play is with strangers. You book one slot in a room, and some strangers turn up and fill up the rest of the room, and you play with them. And they think it's weird that we book out an entire room at a time, and we think it's weird the other way around. So that's one thing. The other side I would say is that there are different aspects of design, of course. So there's environmental design, there's even sound design, narrative design. Overall, though, as a real game designer, what you should be striving for is to design the player experience. If you're thinking of that from day one, you end up with the best result usually.
I think it's really important to have, I don't know if it is because I'm Australian, but I think it's important to have a narrative in the story to follow. In our particular room, we're going to do one at the moment, hoping a bunch in the future. But yeah, so we do actually have a story that, you don't know, but a story that progresses. So each time you solve a puzzle, you get like another part of the story. It's not heavily text-based, which is good, because you get in some rooms where you have to read like 10 A4 pages, which is horrible and a waste of time. No offense if anyone has one of those. But yeah, so like our story progresses as you go through, and you need to have some sort of motivation as to why you're doing this, and you want something more to motivate you to finish in time more than just a clock ticking down. You want to care about maybe the characters you're reading about, and hopefully solve or save someone's life or find a cure for a disease or something like that before the time runs out.
I think it's also maybe up to, it's almost the case here in Australia where we've got a variety of different businesses who kind of specialise in different things. So I've been to some rooms which have been, they look beautiful by Brazilian standards, I guess. No bikini models or anything like that, or abs. But they will be really, really amazingly decked out and immersive. And some people are into that. They're into that really immersive experience. When I read reviews, sometimes review websites will say, how are you judged on creativity and atmosphere and other things like that. The one score that I find the most important to myself about our rooms is fun. So I don't care as much whether people find our rooms as creative or immersive or something. They're still very important things, but ultimately my measure of success is how much fun have people had. And I guess with kind of like what Tom was saying before is like that about the player experience, and that narrative element and the player agency and things I was talking about before is just a vehicle to drive that. Similarly, the look and feel of everything is a vehicle to drive that player experience as well. But I think here in Australia we're pretty lucky because you can get a variety of experiences. Maybe we need that classification system so that you can push out, I'm a technology place or I'm like a fun-driven place or anything like that too. Maybe you can even just call up the place and ask them directly. It's like, what's your place like? What are your rooms like? Is this something that I'm going to enjoy? So,
Okay, thanks. Should we get another question? This lady here was putting her hand up.
If you just wait, there are some mics coming around.
The mic's coming around, yeah.
American, I can talk really loud if you need me to. So I have a lot of puzzle background. I actually come from Seattle where Microsoft holds puzzle events for the whole weekend. We have a lot of escape rooms. And so a lot of people in the Seattle area have a lot of puzzle creation experience. I just wanted to know if any of you would be willing to share what kind of experience you brought or what kind of puzzles did you find most useful to know how to create when you started doing escape rooms? Because you're not just looking at, a room full of nerds in an office space over the weekend, drinking a lot of soda, solving as many puzzles as they can. You're looking for an experience. I just wondered if you could talk a little bit about that.
I guess from the way that I approach the puzzle design is that we like to look at it from two ends. So we start at one end by saying, okay, what's the story that we want to tell with this particular room? So we've got 2 rooms up in Sydney at the moment, and the first one is based on kind of, you have to save the world, but it's less of a spy thriller and more like Austin Powers and stuff like that, where we're trying to introduce comedic elements into it. So when you start off with that kind of premise, you go, all right, what can I do? What can I get players to do, which will be relevant to the particular story or theme of the room, and that they would find interesting, and then find a way to incorporate some kind of either activity or puzzle into that as well. So again, driven from that perspective of what would be natural in that type of environment. The other way that we do things at the same time is that we'll be looking up mechanics and other things like that. I can tell you Instructables is a really good resource of like people who make really cool things, or sometimes really useless machines as well. But sometimes you can be inspired by what you see around and saying, oh, that would be an interesting puzzle by itself. And then if it fits into the story, then great. If it doesn't, then you might keep it for something else as well. But ultimately, yeah, is it an interesting activity to do? And then does it match up with the story? And if you can kind of put those two things together, that's certainly how we approach it anyway.
Yeah, I always find it bad when you go to a room and it's like, I don't know, I can't think of anything on the top of my head. I'm not creative. But then
I can tell you, when I went to we went to a jailbreak and there was a pirate chest in the room.
yeah, exactly. Like you just find a puzzle that's just so out of place, has nothing to do with the room, and you're like, this would never be here. It's like, it kind of breaks the immersion. Yeah.
So I'm just going to quickly ask the panelists a couple of things, and I just wanted to get them to give us a short yay or nay, do you like it, and under what context. Jesse, do you like lockout saves?
No. It's not, well, obviously it's like the safes are designed to do that, so it's not really.
Can we just clarify what that means?
So you'll get to a room and there is a safe, and 3 times incorrect guesses, you'll get a 10-minute lockout.
Yeah, so that's, well, first of all, if you're playing well, you shouldn't have to guess so code 3 times to get a save, if the room is designed well enough. But it is, obviously there's that sort of thing, like you're trying to get the player not to just, guess, or
brute force.
Yes. But then, again, if you're trying things that you think are logical and then you aren't getting it, and then you lock out for 10 minutes, that's a big waste of time, and could potentially be the end of the game if you have to just wait there for 10 minutes if it's your last puzzle. So, personally, I don't think it's a great design.
Okay. Matt, what do you feel about players feeling stressed and having anxiety? Is that important in a game?
Well, I don't. I think it depends upon the room. I mean, if you're creating a horror game, then yes, you want them to be stressed and anxious because that's the horror element of it. If you're talking more for health reasons, then no. I don't want anybody to have a heart attack or anything like that happening in my room at all. But if it's a deliberate emotional state, then absolutely yes. And I think creating tension helps drive the rooms, because the whole point of having a set time of 45 minutes or half an hour or 1 hour or something like that is to provide a sense of urgency that yes, you need to do your thing, you need to do it now so you can move on to the next one as well. And that can be stressful, and I think that in some instances, if you can harness that well, that can be great.
Tom, how do you feel about being in a complete darkness?
I think it's generally not an ideal condition, especially if it's going to last for a long period of time. It limits what you can see in the room, and it's often used as a cheat for people who simply haven't decorated their room very well. If it's used in that case, I think it's terrible, just decorate your room. Yeah, but it's also often a cheat for, hey look guys, you're going to find a blacklight now. And there's a metric in escape room designers forums of time to blacklight on each game. I think you should try and extend that as high as possible. So yeah, I don't really like darkness, but it can be used situationally. For example, if you've done something, all the lights are on, you solve some puzzle and the lights go off completely for an instant, that can really heighten player experience if you're trying to inspire tension or fear.
Sorry, I just want to say that I have played Riddle Room and I did quite like getting locked in the closet with no light. I thought that actually worked really well in that situation. Just because you look kind of worried.
Darkness, terrible.
Well, it comes back to that, like, is there a point? Is there a point to
Yes,
it
I
being
was
dark?
stuck in the closet on my own and my friends were outside and they had to unlock it so I could get some light in there. And there was stuff on the walls that I had
And it
to
made
get rid of.
sense in the space? Yes. Perfect. And let's just go through all of Riddle Room's rooms right now. All the spoilers. And Rob, how do you feel about moral dilemmas?
I'm a big fan of them. with our work, because it's not strictly about solving puzzles, it's more about the interaction between the players and the interaction the players have with our actors as well. Very often, the most satisfying thing is actually presenting a moral dilemma to the players that emerges out of the room and having them argue it out and having them reveal themselves to each other and play as they are. So it's a really interesting thing that the escape room form and the immersive kind of performance form can do with players is to place them at the center of the movie. And at the center of the movie, there's usually, particularly if it's a good one, there's usually some kind of question that you're wrestling with. And instead of watching other people do it, you yourselves get to do it. And so I'm a big fan of putting that stuff in.
If anyone's ever heard of the Stanford prison experiment, I have an outstanding desire to implement that in an escape room.
Next question.
I think with the moral one as well though, so one thing I'm really like, this is probably the best thing that I enjoy about my job is that you get to see people running around and you really don't know who your friends are until you've been locked in the room with them. And we went to play Small Time Criminals the other day and we're talking to the game master. So Rob, you've had player situations where you've had players who've been left behind.
Oh yeah. Yeah. Players who have been left behind by their team, players who have been sacrificed by their team. I've personally been killed by players. As an example, spoilers for those who haven't played the game, there are drugs hidden in the bank somewhere. And when I was being security guard, the way they solved, most people hide, this team had found the drugs already and bribed me with the drugs. And so, okay, sure, I'll take the drugs, that's fine, because as a kind of improvisational thing, you can respond to that and you can pick up on offers that players make. And so I took the drugs, I went downstairs, I consulted with the game runner. He was of the opinion, go back upstairs, coke down your brains. So up I go, coke down my brains. And so they're surprised, oh, he's back, oh, he's only there. And they were trying to ask me for codes and stuff. I'm like, I'm too high to be able to do that. And then at the very end of the game, I'm passed out, drool on my thing on the floor as they have to exit. So I've died from an overdose, and the players literally have to step over the security. About the moral dilemma thing, it's never a matter of do you choose X or do you choose Y, because that's a really boring, obvious way of doing it. And you put them in a situation where they have to make a decision, and all 6 of those motherfuckers walk straight over.
We'll take 2 questions. If you guys just, they're gonna choose. Yep, you guys choose it.
I should also just say, up here I have 3 vouchers for Cubescape at Melbourne Central, and I'll give them away to the best questions, and also the 2 lucky winners who found them under their seat. If you come and see me afterwards, I need to get your name and mobile number if you do win these.
Can I ask you a question?
Next question.
The kind of things that you're talking about getting people to react as if they're immersed, following the storyline, moral dilemmas, improvisation, these are all the skills of a game master in role-playing games. So what strikes me is, do you guys think that is there going to be some sort of collision or collusion on these things? Is this going to bring people into role-playing? Do role players want to play escape rooms? Do you look for people who are GMs when you're employing people? How do you see these skills working together?
I'll feel that to start with, because ours is probably closest to laughing on the panel. We don't specifically look for GMs or people who have role-playing experience, but all of my team come from theatre backgrounds, film and television, and all of the core design team have been game masters and role players since we were teenagers. So it's a kind of natural thing for us. The way we play is with people rather than things. Yeah. But I think also that the space that the escape room phenomena opens up is a fundamentally performative one, where you ask people to play as if a thing is real, regardless of whether they're robbing a bank or they're going to a space station or any of those kind of things. The core conceit of escape rooms is you are locked in the room, and of course you're not locked in the room unless you know. And that's a bit why the story is important for us, and why the interactions and all of that sort of stuff, because it heightens the player's experience of another space, of another possibility space. And role-playing, of course, does that, and live theatre does that, live art does that, all of those kind of spaces that ask for a participating audience, fundamentally, of players who are playing and not playing, or watching and not watching at the same time. So I think, like we talked about the future of escape rooms from pop-up playgrounds point of view and from my point of view, that's, I think, a really open space that escape rooms can move into, in that they can make entire worlds you can just lose yourselves in.
Do you think then that may flow people back to seeking out RPGs because they've given themselves permission to have that conceit of believing in this other world, and that's often what there's a barrier for people to play RPGs to say, oh, it's not real.
There's a leap, but I feel like the rise of tabletop gaming is probably will drive a return more to, because it's a different kind of social experience. So we sit around a table, we play Settlers of Catan, we play Mage the Ascension, whatever, and they're kind of very similar social experiences. Whereas this is a very different kind of active, almost LARPing experience in that we are physically doing a thing, and that's a lower barrier to entry to a lot of people than the tabletop.
Yeah, I don't feel like it's going to be a silver bullet to get people to come and DM more Dungeon Masters things, but I do feel that, and I'd say mainly because the way it's structured in Australia, you're mostly playing with your friends already. You brought them into a space, no one else can see you. You're kind of tucked away neatly, you get this experience, it lasts an hour, and then you forget about it. So I don't really know that it's going to translate back to Dungeons & Dragons, but maybe.
We were going to get a second question, sorry, but we are running out of time. So I'll just move on to the next topic. VRs, is this where escape rooms are heading? Now, a lot of people that I've spoken to think that that's where escape rooms should head. Have you guys all played VR? You guys?
Yeah.
Yes?
Has anyone played the VR escape room?
Is that the Gear VR one?
There's been a few. I know there was one in Sydney running a few months ago as well, where they were doing a VR escape room. They do it overseas. I think there are some places here in Melbourne which do the same as well. I saw there was one hand up as well. Did you enjoy it?
Yeah.
So Jesse, do you think escape rooms is heading into VR? Because I personally have done a VR experience, and it wasn't necessarily an escape room, but the only thing I find with it is a single person game. You know, you could go into a VR with another person, but you're not really interacting with them, you're interacting with the room, and I think that's different to what an escape room essentially is meant to be. You know, you come home from watching TV, or you're coming home from the office where you're on a computer all day, and you want to be interacting with other people, not watching the screen, because, you know, let's face it, I could do that at home. So Jesse, what do you think? Are we heading into VRs?
Well, Chris and I were discussing that we should make our own. So maybe. But I don't know. I don't really. I mean, there's potential. Obviously, they already exist. But I don't think that that's going to be the future of escape rooms, like all the physical ones will disappear and all go to VR. I think they're just totally different experiences, really. Just the same as playing a first-person shooter on a console or PC, and then going and playing laser tag or, you know, skirmish or something like that. They're totally different experiences. One's not going to take over the other.
Yeah, so I totally agree with that as well. At the moment, VR is a very single-player experience. You can play multiplayer games to some extent, but mostly you're going to be doing it if it's a, say, a room scale setup that you go to. Sure, maybe you might play that with some friends if you've done zero latency, for example. But most people will be playing this at home on their very powerful gaming PC or console. And it's not so much a social experience as an escape room is. People come to escape rooms because they really want to bring their friends and experience something with them, face to face. And I don't think you can get that with VR.
It sounds like then the problem is the technology at the moment. If VR is a single player experience, and that's because the technology is restricting it to that, then if the technology evolves so that you can have multiplayer VR, would that then alleviate the problem?
So that's a very good question, Matt. I totally would give you a free So I do think that is a possible future, but the technology is actually a long way from getting to that, I think, probably in the 5 to 10 years mark. So that's one thing. The second thing is, I think you'll see much more augmented reality in escape rooms, where you will have secondary spaces inside a real physical space, for example, projecting things on walls that represent a different reality. I really hope that will take off, because I think that could be very cool, and I think some cool puzzles with that. But I don't think people are going to come into an escape room and then go, oh, you know what now? I'm going to put the shutters over my eyes and do something about it.
I think the interesting thing with that one would be the challenge. from an owner's point of view of how you implement something like that, because one problem that we all face as escape room owners is that you will not believe what players can break and how they can do it. And we had a prop in one of our rooms, which was we had a machinist who made something for us, and it was like a bonded, pressed steel rod, which you'd say you need like 50 strong men to like break it, and people broke it. So if you have like an expensive piece of VR equipment, then people would also break that too. So I wonder if it would be feasible from an owner's point of view, because it would be a huge risk.
Yeah, well, for me, we operate our rooms in strike bowling alleys, so our general clientele are drunk 18-year-olds. So no way.
We'll take one question on that, just on this topic, VRs. Anyone? Yes, you can choose.
Sorry, I just want to see what hand stayed up.
Okay.
Just briefly, there's a game in VR called Keep Talking or Everyone Explodes or something like that.
Really good plan.
Yeah, it's a really good game, and I was just thinking inside an escape room, that actually could be something really good, because on the walls you could have the instructions for defusing the bomb, and everyone's got to tell the person who's wearing the goggles how to defuse the bomb. So rather than being a complete VR experience, can you see VR or something close to it being used inside an escape room as a puzzle?
So I think that's a really good question. I'd love to give you one of these, so come on, yeah. I'm going to get rid of it as well. But I don't see that happening in the escape room, because I would much rather build that bomb in the escape room.
Yeah.
Why would I make it virtual reality when I can make it reality?
Yes. So, next question is, in terms of the future, sorry, I'm just reading my notes here. AIs. This was a question on the forum. Someone asked about AIs. Can we have rooms that are fully automated?
I think I probably answered this. Yes.
Just a little bit of background on this, because I think all our escape rooms, barring Tom, we just use plain old people. So not all people. Oh yes, I'm sorry. I'm sorry. And it's been working well for us. I think having that interaction with a person, getting to know your name. We remember every single customer that walks through our doors, and knowing how they play and finding their little quirks. Sometimes we'll have teams who don't speak the entire time, whereas we have other teams who are screaming at each other, or you'll have one person who hides the missing thing that everyone's been looking for. So being able to relay that back to the customers, this is what you did well and what you didn't, and having that human interaction. But apparently now Tom, and we have done his room and it is fantastic. We love Cubescape. Sorry, Cubescape. I keep saying Cubescape. It's Cubescape. Tom, over to you. AI.
Okay, so what was the actual question again? Was it whether this is going to take off? I don't know. That's a much harder question. So the short bit of background is our game is a bit like a multiplayer choose-your-own-adventure. There are multiple people reading the same choose-your-own-adventure story at the same time, and all of the actions are things that happen in the room. So every door that opens, we know about it. Every puzzle that you solve, we know where you're up to. We know what you have done, what you haven't done, and how long has elapsed. So essentially, we've plotted out every possible future for this game in advance, and we have a computer game engine running behind the scenes that will then make the story flow as you play through it. So we can do things, for example, like if you sit on the couch and do nothing for 20 minutes, there'll be a very good reason in the story why the door that was locked suddenly opens for you. So we don't need a game master to give you clues, because the game will essentially play itself. But it's structured so that you get the best possible experience in the 50 minutes that you're there, or at least we hope you do. So it's certainly possible. It's very hard work. I mean, it's taken us kind of 2 years to build this engine and implement all the drivers for controlling devices and sensors and things. But it's certainly possible, and because we're aware that we're an early bird in this market, we're monitoring people overseas as well. And we're seeing more and more people start to say, oh yeah, well I've hooked up a bunch of Arduinos to do this kind of stuff. It's definitely coming. Whether it will replace Game Masters, I don't think so. No, I think people love Game Master run experiences, especially things like Small-Time Criminals, where the player experience is so heightened by that. What I do think, though, is that you can run an AI-driven experience and have it be excellent. And from a business point of view, that means I can clone it and distribute it around Australia and sell lots. So that's good for me.
So you made Skynet for escape rooms.
Here at the panel last year, we kind of escaped.
We have a question on, is there a question on AI? Yes?
Where where do you feel the role is of AIs and automation that hinder you? So that hinder the player and actually give misinformation as an experience. So
Did everyone hear the question? It was about how AIs, what we think about AIs that would hinder or obstruct the player. Is that right?
yeah, as a narrative tool, basically.
Yes. Okay.
Look, I'm happy to take that. I think some of the others will probably have points on this as well. But again, I'd say it comes down to player experience. If that is heightening the experience, so for example, if there's a story where there's an AI antagonist and they are hindering your ability to progress, that could be fantastic. No spoilers, but that's pretty much what our game does. Yeah, so there's definitely possibilities for that. I'll let someone else answer as well.
We have a second room we're running at the moment called Room Service, which is inspired by Five Nights at Freddy's. And so it's fundamentally run by an incredibly simple AI running through Arduinos, and it's basically a map of a hotel. You're in the kitchen, and you have to keep the guests out of the kitchen. That's the Five Nights at Freddy bit, and that's all completely automated. That's run through an AI that determines where the guests go. But the core of the experience is again about creating anxiety and tension in the players, so they argue amongst each other and they don't listen to the instructions, and when they don't listen to instructions, they don't work out where the players are going, and they almost always get eaten.
I said we didn't listen to it.
Oh, you didn't listen? Yeah. So you get front-loaded a bunch of really important information while you're busy doing the escape room thing, and so you miss out what's actually going to kill you. But there are all of those things that are in the room so that you can find them as you're playing as well. So we've designed it so that either you have, fundamentally it's about the live experience you have with your friends, but it's supported by basically playing against an AI. So yeah.
There was another hand that I saw, but yes.
Hi. Sorry. So when it comes to AI with escape rooms, like what is something in the future, especially when it gets more AI like, I guess, what is something that an AI with an escape room could do that a normal human GM would not be able to do? Like something that you would want to work towards with that would be mainly like I said, something that a human couldn't entirely do.
Can I answer?
Yeah, go.
Just from a player perspective, when we were doing Tom's room yesterday, what I enjoyed about that and what I'd hope to implement in our own rooms is that AI was very succinct. When we needed help, it was given very quickly, and it was given to a point where we understood it, but they weren't giving us the answer. I think a lot of owners and even game masters, and as a player, when you want a clue, sometimes it's two ends of the spectrum. They'll either give you the answer, or they'll not give you enough of a clue, or they'll waffle on about something else, and you won't really understand what it is you're supposed to do with that clue anyway. So I think that's what the AI in Tom's room does really well, is that it gives you the clue needed at the right time, and it's like, oh, okay, yeah, I know what to do.
So I'd like to touch on that as well. I think that's another great question. Please come see.
Where's
I
my
think
Tom?
an AI is never going to be better than the best person, but it can be better than the worst person. And so it can make up for absent-minded or busy game masters. So that's what ours definitely does, and I think that's fantastic. But I think the best game master could run our room better than our room runs itself, definitely, because they'd be really responsive, they'd know exactly what you needed and how much you needed, and they'd be tuned better than our AI is. That's actually something I'd like to improve, and I've got some ideas on it. But I don't think an AI is ever going to do something better than what you can dream up in your head and hire a little person to hide behind the scenes and do for you.
Theoretically, AI would be able to scale the games better so that you could have it monitor lots of different players doing lots of different things. Yeah. But I think the live experience is best if it's working in concert with a human being.
Yeah. But then again, from a business point of view, being able to make your room once and sell it 1 million times is a fantastic opportunity. So that's a positive.
I also think, because your question was asking what it can do better, the AI, I think, like in your room particularly, it can bypass the puzzle. So if you're taking too long and you're like running out of time, it can actually like give you the answer, or not give you the answer, but give you the object, or like just if you're trying to open a locked door or something like that, and it is taking you too long, eventually that locked door will just open and it'll be like, oh, we overrode the system.
The trick, however, is to do that without disappointing the players.
Yeah,
and that is the
really
hard
good
thing.
And in fact, the human will be able to gauge that slightly better at the moment.
Absolutely.
Actually, because like I kind of knew like that your program did that before we did the room, I was actually really impressed with did happen. It only happened once because we took too long on one puzzle. But yeah, we're trying to fiddle with a certain wooden object.
Spoilers,
Yeah,
just
we'll have Monty in the room. And we were fiddling with something, and then we took too long with it, and then eventually, yeah, we were able to continue without having to.
I think that's one of our best sort of effects that people go, oh, that was awesome. But what we're trying to do is not have you waste time on things. So like a good game master will say, you know, this puzzle's not that important, guys. I'm going to give you a really obvious hint for this one right now, because really, you want to see the good stuff that's behind that door. So we're trying to funnel you to the best parts of the experience that we can fit into the time that you're there. And that's what a good AI can do, but a game master can do it too. But AI's a cheat.
Thanks, Tom. There was another question that was brought up in the forums. Mega games. Now we're talking about escape games in the outdoor world, or could be indoor, but can we do escape games with over, more than 20 people, 150 people, 500 people? I know, Rob, you recently did one last weekend, was it?
Yep, we ran a game called Where in Melbourne is Carmen and Diego, for Melbourne International Games Week, which was a 2-day-long puzzle game where you find secret agents hidden throughout the city and interrogate them as to where the other secret agents are, etc., and you solve the puzzles they give you to be able to find them. So it sort of works a little like Carmen San Diego does. But this is where we started really. The pop-up playground's only been doing these kind of immersive rooms for about a year now, whereas we've been running these kind of on-street games, street adventures for 5 years. And they share a lot in common with escape rooms, but I think that they're a much wider kind of field, I think, that has a lot in common with alternate reality gaming and LARPing and orienteering, etc. as well. So.
Well, we are recently also in the works, Labyrinth escape rooms, of doing a large mega game. I think this was the dream from the very, very beginning. I always had this idea of doing something huge on a grand scale, and no one in Sydney has really done it yet. I think there were a few, there were scams, and now no one trusts them. Did everyone hear about the werewolf? Something escaped the werewolf? Yeah, and so that was here in Melbourne as well. And then it was a week before the event, and they went bankrupt, and no one got their money back. So we hope that people, still trust us in making this experience. We want to do a live zombie experience similar to Walking Dead, where we love zombies, and having actors dressed as zombies walking around, you have to interact them in some sort of way, but obviously not in a way where you're going to get eaten. So I want to be able to do that, and that is hopefully going to be next April. But yes, mega games, it is definitely a future of escape rooms. It is not going to take over the typical brick and mortar escape games where you can, go to. But yes, it's going to be a one-day event. Hopefully we can do more of those. Question?
Joan, with the mega game though, how have you found the challenge? Or do you have puzzles?
It's very challenging.
Do you have puzzles
Yes.
in this mega game?
Yes.
Have you found it a challenge to create puzzles which involve that many people? Because
Yes.
I mean, even with escape rooms, one thing that I know that we find is that in the design process, how do you design activities which are going to get everybody kind of invested and involved in a particular puzzle, and if you multiply that by 150, 500, whatever,
So the way we've looked into Scrap doing that overseas, they have run it successfully in Japan and San Francisco, and really spoken to a lot of people who have done these type of rooms. I know it happens in Canada as well. So a lot of the puzzle designs that we created is not so much hands-on, because we're not there to reset it for the next team. A lot of it would be visually, or standing in a position and seeing something, retrospectively, or being able to interact with a zombie. So you have to maybe get your teammates to distract them somehow, and you have to try and pinch something from them without.
You're encouraging the players to sacrifice themselves as well.
And there's going to be rewards at the end for the fastest team. And not only are you trying to get what you need to do in this game, but you also have to, the second point of it is to escape or get there with all your team members still intact. So you can still technically get to the end, but you could all be dead or turn into zombies. So yeah, designing the puzzles is definitely the biggest hurdle for us, is making sure that there are as little bottlenecks as possible. We would hate pay for people to get to the event and they say, oh, you know what, we didn't finish it because they were taking too long, the team before us. So that definitely is something that we are working on and making sure that there is very minimal bottlenecks. But yes, puzzle designs are very, I think even in escape rooms, it is hard to build a easy, simple room that seems challenging. You can build a difficult puzzle, but making one that is simple enough for a wide range of audience, something that doesn't have, you know, prerequisite knowledge, something that, you know, not everyone can achieve is difficult to do.
You also want to have puzzles in your room that if your room allows up to, you know, 7 people, that they can all work on
Something.
the puzzle at the same time if there is only, like, if it is like a linear game.
Yes,
Because you don't want to have 2 people working on a puzzle and 5 people waiting for the puzzle to be
Yeah.
solved.
And that's going to be, and that's the problem that we had in the mega game that we are designing. How are we going to get teams to come in a group of 2 to complete it? How are we going to get teams that are in groups of 6 or 8 or whatever it is? Are they going to be able to split up and reconvene? So yes, we are working on it. Questions? Is there a mic around? Do you want to choose a? We only have 5 minutes left, guys, so let's make things quick. And if you want to stay back, we are here to answer any questions. You can talk to us. We're here for a little while.
Sorry. How hard do you guys find it to refresh games? Like, I'm presuming there's not a lot of repeat business. Because once you've solved the puzzle, you've solved the puzzle. So do you like mix it up every couple of months, or do you just?
Certainly some people do, but for my take on it, we're not going to bother. There are so many new people coming into this gaming phenomena that we could serve the new market only for the next 10 years and never have to bother refreshing.
Well,
That's it. I'd love to make new ones. That's
So
awesome.
you would never look at something like a chapter-based escape room where you do it this week and then you next month.
That's a different question. I'd love to do that too. And yeah, we've got the technology to do that, so we will probably do that in the future.
With Rod's Room, I've done Rod's Room twice now, and the first time I did it, and the second time I did it was just as amazing as the first. His Small Time Criminals room can be replayed, and I think that's the beauty of him and his team creating a room with not just puzzles but storylines. You go into this bank and you want to know what Violet did, what she does in her spare time. You want to know, all these little side stories because there's so much to do in that room and the replayability of that. I heard from your Game Master, Rob, that you get teams coming back 4 times.
Oh yeah. Sometimes because it's like an open world, there's more stuff that you can possibly do in the hour. So people will hear about, how much did we get? Oh, you made $1 million. How much is it possible? There's $12 million worth of stuff in there. Did you go? I've got to go find the rest of it. But we also, from the beginning, built it. Like the description of chapters is a useful one actually because we built Small Time Criminals to be an ongoing narrative event. So there's a main story which is Come Rob the Bank, but then we've got 4 different playwrights, myself included, who have written specific mysteries that will be released over the coming couple of months, nominally starting in December, although I'm not entirely convinced we'll be ready. But those are like a detective game, so instead of just stealing all the money, find all the clues and be able to work out who did it. And we respond to player input as well, so players come and do stuff in the bank, and we've got a YouTube channel where we've got actors in who improvise the roles of the people who work in the office. And so we do episodes, we've got 2 episodes so far up on YouTube where you learn more of the backstory. You can also sometimes see them entering their passwords and things like that, where you can work out clues that will be useful. But you also build a relationship with the characters in the bank. And I think that's a really interesting potential for, again, this kind of immersive space to become almost like a serialized story. So yeah.
But for the rest of us, no, we don't change our rooms.
To also address the chapter thing, there is a place that we went to here in Melbourne which does do that. So they have 3 rooms, and it's an overarching story which covers 3 rooms, and it's escapade puzzle rooms. And so the first room has the first part of the story, then the next part, then the next part, and you can do them independently, or you can do them in the intended order as well. In terms of refreshing, I said initially that we were going to refresh after 6 to 12 months, and it's been coming up to 2 years now. We haven't done it yet. We are intending to do it fairly soon, but we were waiting for it to drop off, and there was still enough demand that we didn't need to play people who haven't heard of escape rooms. There is also another place in Sydney, Next Level Games, which does what they call a Blitz Room, which is a 15-minute room, and their intention is to refresh it every month.
But then that can be played with 1 person, which is interesting because a lot of rooms you can't.
I don't think that they have refreshed it yet because it's a big deal, obviously, but that was certainly the But yeah, so there are kind of these ideas floating around.
I mean, most operators, when they're successful, they just try to expand and make more rooms.
Yeah, it's really difficult. I think a lot of people, anyone who's done iRooms anyway, I don't know, it wouldn't be as surprising. You would know where the doors are or the locks, and even if you added a couple more puzzles or changed it around, you would know the space, you would know the layout of the room. So yeah, I don't think, and it's so much hard work to build rooms. I tell you what, I know how to paint a wall now.
We've always, like discussed, or at least me and Chris have, always talked about like having a replayable room, which it is really hard, obviously, because even if you change what the number of the combination is, the way that you get that combination is still going to be the same. So like the only way, like you could probably do it is if you had a 2-hour room, but you only gave the people an hour, so then they don't even be able to play it, and then they have to come back, and obviously that's just basically having 2 rooms in one. It just, there's no, they have to come back and do the first hour really quickly and continue. It's just,
So that's another advantage of an AI. We can save your game.
Thanks guys, that is the full hour. We did have other topics to cover, but we're always here. If you guys have any questions, please feel free to come and speak to us. Thank you for being here. We love that you made the next
Just a reminder, if you want a prize, I need your number.